This video examines Stromberg versus California, a pivotal trial-level case heard in the Superior Court of Tulare County. This session is presented by the World Affairs Council of Austin. The case we are focusing on is Stromberg versus California, which began at the trial level in the Superior Court of Tulare County. The plaintiff in this case was the state of California, prosecuting the defendant Yetta Stromberg. The case was a state criminal prosecution under California's 1919 Criminal Syndicalism Act and took place between 1929 and 1930. 19-year-old Yetta Stromberg was prosecuted for supervising a camp ceremony where children raised a red flag. California viewed this symbol as supporting violent revolution. The subsequent Supreme Court ruling became the first to strike down a state law on First Amendment grounds. At the Pioneer Summer Camp, affiliated with a workers' organization, children saluted a red flag and recited a pledge. Authorities raided the camp and arrested Stromberg. She was charged under the Criminal Syndicalism Act for displaying a red flag as an emblem of opposition to organized government. Yetta Stromberg was charged under the California Criminal Syndicalism Act of 1919. The specific offense was displaying a red flag as a sign, symbol, or emblem of opposition to organized government. In the Stromberg case, the prosecution argued that displaying the red flag, even during a children's camp ceremony, symbolized support for violent revolution, which the Criminal Syndicalism Act was designed to suppress. The 1919 California Criminal Syndicalism Act criminalized promoting doctrines that advocated violence for political change. It emerged during the post-World War I Red Scare and was heavily used against labor activists, notably in the prior Whitney versus California case. Yetta Stromberg worked as a counselor at a summer camp run by the Young Communist League. During daily camp activities, they raised a red flag and recited the pledge. "I pledge allegiance to the workers' red flag." We now examine the arguments made by the state of California in the trial of Stromberg versus California. The prosecution argued that the red flag symbolized violent revolution, which violated the Criminal Syndicalism Act. They claimed Stromberg promoted doctrines aiming for political change via violence and viewed the camp ceremony as illegal advocacy. The prosecution's theory centered on the red flag as a recognized symbol of revolutionary violence. They asserted that Stromberg supervised the salute to the flag, violating the act, and that the state had the right to suppress symbols associated with overthrowing the government. Sheriff's Deputy J.R. McClellan served as the key prosecution witness. He testified about the camp raid, material seizures, and described the red flag ceremony to the jury, providing the law enforcement perspective. Evie Caraway, a former camp employee and a defense witness, claimed the camp encouraged anti-government sentiment. She testified that staff supported radical messages, allegedly under pressure. Superintendent Harold P. Whitcomb, a local school official, served as a prosecution witness. His testimony focused on the radical indoctrination of minors and raised concerns about the Pioneer Camp's activities. Dr. Leonard S. Markham, the state political radicalism analyst, testified as an expert witness. He explained the red flag's association with violent revolution, asserting that the state considered it a dangerous symbol of radicalism. Dr. Markham's expert testimony analyzed the red flag's symbolism, associating it with violent political revolution. The state presented this evidence to support their claim that Stromberg engaged in illegal advocacy. The prosecution presented evidence of the camp's affiliation and focused testimony on the red flag's meaning of revolution. The defense countered, describing the ceremony as innocent political expression and including the text of the children's pledge as evidence. Next, we will review the defense arguments presented by Yetta Stromberg's legal team in the case against California. The defense strategy contested the red flag's meaning, arguing for protected political speech. They challenged the state's vague law, asserting that Stromberg had no intent to incite violence or sabotage. The defense immediately challenged the state law's constitutionality, arguing the statute was vague and overly broad. They claimed the law violated fundamental First Amendment protections, centering the case on protected symbolic political speech. The defense challenged the California Criminal Syndicalism Act, asserting it was unconstitutionally vague and overbroad. They argued the law violated the First Amendment's guarantee of free speech by criminalizing protected symbolic expression. Defense witness Margaret Ellsworth, a camp counselor, offered calm testimony about the flag ceremony. She claimed the camp activities were peaceful and educational, asserting there was no intent to incite violence. Professor Samuel R. Halberstam, a symbolic speech expert, testified that symbolic expression is vital to democracy and that political flags are a long-standing form of protected speech. His testimony countered the prosecution's violent symbolism theory. Defense expert Dr. Clara Mendelsohn provided context for the red flag, connecting it to historical labor movements. Her testimony countered the violent symbol theory, arguing the flag symbolized workers' rights. Mrs. Helen Duarte, a camper's parent, testified that the summer camp was wholesome and educational, focusing on cooperation. Her testimony offered a realistic parent's perspective of the camp's activities. The defense placed the red flag in the context of historical labor movements and workers' rights. They argued the Criminal Syndicalism Act, used heavily during the Red Scare, improperly criminalized protected workers' political expression. The jury found Jetta Stromberg guilty on all charges. The trial judge imposed a significant 4-year sentence for violating the Criminal Syndicalism Act provision related to the flag's symbolism of opposition. After the guilty verdict and 4-year sentence, Jetta Stromberg's defense immediately filed an appeal with the California District Court of Appeal, challenging the vague language of the state statute. The California District Court of Appeal affirmed Stromberg's conviction. The court maintained that the Syndicalism Act was constitutional and ruled that the flag display was not protected speech. Jetta Stromberg was prosecuted under the provision of the California Criminal Syndicalism Act that criminalized displaying a red flag as a sign, symbol, or emblem of opposition to organized government. The defense consistently challenged the law's language as vague and overly broad, arguing it violated fundamental First Amendment rights. They asserted that the law lacked clear definitions of illegal activity and criminalized symbolic political speech. Following the state appellate decision, the defense petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court for review. Stromberg challenged the constitutionality of the state law based on First Amendment violations, and the Supreme Court granted certiorari. This marks the end of our overview of the trial phase and initial appeals in Stromberg v. California.